Hey there, Cerise here. Good morning, afternoon, or evening. Welcome to my channel and welcome to story time. Guys, this story time is very interesting and something that all of us could learn from. Whoa, when I heard this, I was like, freaky. Not even normal at all. Or not today, Satan. I gotta tell you, when you guys heard this story, you're gonna see how things could actually go from online to real life. All right. Right now, I'm located in the north coast of the Dominican Republic. I'm located in a neighborhood called Los Charamicos in a town called Sosua, filled with beautiful beaches in a province called Plata. If you're located around the world and you want to come live here in the Caribbean island of the Dominican Republic, you let me know because I can help you. Alrighty. Guys, this story is about a woman named Camilla. Of course, you know I don't say the real names for confidentiality reasons. And we're going to name another gentleman Michael. And the strange gentleman, we're going to name him S for the word strange. Okay, so we have S, we have Michael, we have Camilla. So Michael is on his Facebook page and he wrote a very passionate quote about something. Now, Camilla thought it was beautiful and she put a little comment below under his post. Now, all of a sudden, S, he writes something. And the quote was about God. What Michael wrote was about God. So S went on and he's like, oh, blah, 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 blah. You could just imagine what he would have said if he doesn't believe in God. We don't need to talk about that here on this story. Well, Camilla, who is a spiritual person, she's a truth seeker and a truth speaker. You know, she's not necessarily religious, but she does love spirituality. When she saw what S wrote for his comment on the post, she just went in with her truth. And she was like, look, blah, 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 blah. And she just pulverized S. S went back at her. S freaked out on her and everything. He started to flip out. And she was like, oh my God. He flipped out so badly that she could feel him murdering her if he could through the keyboard. So she went and she looked on his profile just to see who she was speaking to. And she looked at all his profile pics. There was only 5. All 5 were of like animals, like vicious animals. There was one of a vicious panther. There was one of a vicious dog. Like there was some of skulls, one of guns and money. So she was just like, okay, whatever. Like there were no photos of him. So she was just like, okay, whatever. So she ignored him. Well, he certainly didn't ignore her. He started to stalk her, literally. And I'm not talking about just creeping her online, guys. I'm talking about stalking her physically. And how did he begin to do it? She checked in on her Facebook. She checked into a restaurant. For those of you who don't know, Facebook has a feature where you can check in to a location when you arrive, and it just shares your location, the address, and what you're eating. You can upload photos and stuff of that nature. So that's what she did. He went to that restaurant and followed her home from that restaurant and found out what building she lived in. Okay? She lived in like a residential area with a gate out front. Not here in the Dominican Republic, in Brazil. Okay? So she had like a gated community that she lived in. Now, he followed her home. After that, she started to see him around a lot. Now, that night, When he went to the restaurant, she didn't see him at the restaurant. She doesn't remember seeing him there, but she does remember that night going home, and there was a car following very closely behind her with headlights. But because it was nighttime, she wasn't able to really see the make and the model or the color of the car. So that was a little bit for her suspicious. So she slowed down a little bit before she got, oh, hold on one second, guys. That would be my coffee. So she slowed down a little bit before she got to her building because she felt like something strange was going on. And what did she do? She waited. The car veered off to the right, and then she pressed her underground button for the garage, and she went underground and parked safely. And she said that night she can remember feeling really strange, and she couldn't put two and two together. All right, so now let's fast forward. All of a sudden, the next day, she's outside of her building, and she meets this dashing gentleman, and he opens up the convenience store door for her. And she's like, oh, hi. And he's like, hi. And he's like, wow, you're very beautiful. She's like, thank you. Now, she doesn't feel particularly beautiful, and she's not told that she's beautiful a lot of the time. Actually, she's quite insecure, and she feels like she needs to fix herself up a lot more before she can be at a position in her life where she will feel better about herself. So she was at a vulnerable state when he told her that she's beautiful, and she loved it. She saw him a couple of times after that, again at the convenience store, which she purposely went to so she could see him. Okay, she would go there just to see him. And of course, he's stalking her, so he would be there. And it was so easy for him to be at that convenience store because there's like little tables outside of the convenience store where you can sit down and have coffee and read. And that's what he was pretty much doing, reading. And she went out and she said hi to him. She saw him a few times. And then one day he said to her, listen, how do I get close to a woman like you? How do I get even just your phone number? And she giggled and she said, well, I can give you my number and we can speak. So that's what she did. She gave him her phone number and they became a little closer. They were talking for a couple of nights, about a week on WhatsApp, voice notes, and, just sending quotes to each other. And he was very sweet and very kind to her. One night, she got a crank call, or some of you may call it a prank call. Well, she got this call, and it was from an unknown number. And as she got the call, she was actually speaking to him on WhatsApp. But the call came in, and it took over her WhatsApp call. And it was an unknown number. So she answered it and she's like, hello. And the person said, I know where you live and I'm coming to get you. She was like, what? So the person hung up and she automatically went back to her WhatsApp call with S. Now S says, are you okay? Because she went back and she was like, hello. And he was like, are you okay? She's like, I don't know. I just got a really strange phone call. Someone knows where I live and I don't know. I don't even know who it could be. And he's like, you have no idea who that could be? She's like, no, none at all. And he's like, okay, well, do you want me to come by? And she's like, no, I don't want you to go out of your way like that. And I have security system here and I'm good. And he's like, are you sure you have security system there? Like you have cameras up and everything? And she told him yes. And she told him where. And she also told him she had sensors outside of her personal door, like a sound sensor. So if someone walks by her door, then there's something, I don't know, a light goes on in her apartment or there's a sound or something. But she told me she's notified when someone goes by her door. But she said that where she lives, there's only her and her neighbor across the way, right? I'm going to get more into that. because the way her building is shaped is different. She lives in the residential area with gated and everything like that. So I'm going to get more to that in a second. Well, he said to her, okay, well, just as long as you're safe and you have cameras and everything. And she's like, yeah, I do. And he's like, okay. And he's like, well, I'll call you in the morning. If anything, please let me know and I can come over at any moment if you need me before dawn breaks. And she's like, okay, no problem. So the next morning, very early in the morning, he contacts her and he says, hey, are you okay? She's like, yeah, I was really scared last night, but everything's fine. Nothing else happened. And he's like, all right. He's like, why don't we meet up today for coffee? And she's like, I would really like that. So as they met up, they were talking and he said to her, I'm a little worried about that person that called you and gave your address. And she's like, yeah, but they didn't say my door number, so that's good. And he's like, oh my gosh, yeah, that is good. And he's like, but speaking of which, now I'm worried about you. And I don't want to worry about you. He's like, what if I don't hear from you? Or what if you and I are talking on the phone and all of a sudden something happens as we're speaking? How will I get to you? Where will I even know? She's like, well, you know where my building is. And he said, yes, but I don't know which floor, which door. And she told him. And he was like, oh, okay, well then, if anything happens, at least I know. And then she's like, yeah, and you know what? One day I'll have you come on over for dinner too. And he's like, all right. They laughed. That was it. She went home and everything was cool. Well, again, the phone calls started to happen and they were unknown. And then so he's like, listen, because she was talking to him on the phone that night. And because she was talking to him on the phone, she would never think it was him. He was calling from a different number, but from a different phone, clearly. And so then he said to her, just don't answer any more unknown calls. And she's like, yeah, but the unknown call is taking over the WhatsApp call. If you guys know what I mean, if you have WhatsApp, sometimes you'll be on the WhatsApp call and then your regular phone will ring with a number and it will just take precedence over the phone number that you're speaking to on WhatsApp. So in any case, he told her, he said, okay, well, you know what? I'm coming over. And she's like, no, don't come over. It's okay. I'm all right. And he's like, no, I'm coming over. At least let me just come by quickly. Let me just check outside and see what's going on, please. And she's like, I don't really want you to go out of your way. And he's like, listen, I can be in the area in a matter of minutes. I don't mind. And she's like, okay. And he's like, and you don't have to let me in. You can think about it. When I get in the area, I'll let you know I'm there. But at least let me just walk around your building. And she's like, okay, no worries. And so that's what he did. So now when he got into the area, he contacted her and he's like, hey, listen, I'm in the area. If you want me to come up and check on you, I'm here. And she thought to herself, you know what? Why not? Like, he's so sweet. He's so nice. She's been talking to him now for a little while, just a little over a week. And a couple of weeks at this point. And she thought, well, you know what? Why not invite him up? She would feel safer that way anyway, having someone there. So she told him, okay, yeah, come on up. And so she was waiting for him, and he didn't buzz in the front residential area. It's like a gated area. He didn't buzz in. And she was like, well, that's strange. And that was it. All of a sudden, she heard a knock on her door. And she was a little scared, so she didn't answer it. That could be the person that actually crank called her, right? So she was terrified. And she said, okay. She thought, let her go upstairs and look out her bedroom window. Now, she lives in like a duplex type of thing, and it doesn't look like her door has a second floor. The way it's designed is very unique. So where her bedroom is, it looks like it would be a different apartment. But she could see out and he would not be able to see in. So she looked down. She looked down and she could clearly see it was the dude that she likes. And he had a rope in his hand. He wrapped it like a tassel. He wrapped it around his hand and then he shoved it into a plastic bag. and she could clearly see him. And she was like, what is that? And then he kept looking over his shoulder at the neighbor's place. Now, the way this place is laid out is it's like a duplex, but hers is a 2-floor. It's a 3-floor place. So she has the first 2 floors, and then upstairs is the penthouse. Same thing across from her. And then a little, a few meters over is the exact same thing again. And then a few meters over from there, the exact same thing again. So it's like a little housing project, but really pretty and very elegant. And so, she's like looking at this dude and she's like, he looks sketchy. Like, first of all, he's forcing himself over, and she really did feel uncomfortable with it at first. And then she didn't, but then she's looking at him downstairs and she can see he's looking over his shoulder. He's like, wiping his mouth. He's, flicking his hair, and especially just put a rope in a plastic bag. What is he even doing with a plastic bag and a rope? She was like, no way. So she called, first of all, she contacted her friend and she's like, listen, if anything happens to me tonight, and she screenshot the photo of him from his WhatsApp. She screenshot that and she sent it to her friend. And she said, if anything happens to me tonight, it's probably this dude. And her friend was like, what? This is strange. Like, who is this dude? You haven't even told me about this dude. And she's like, this is a new guy in my life, and he's outside my door right now. And he kind of got here, and I don't even know how he got outside my door. He didn't even buzz in at the front gates. So I'm a little nervous. And she tried to talk as much as she could, like try to tell as much as she could to her friend. But her friend knows Camilla and knows that this is not a normal situation that Camilla would be into. But Camilla said to her friend, listen, I can't talk right now and plus she was whispering on the phone, like through voice note. And the friend was like trying to call her. And she said to her friend, don't call me. My phone's going to ring. I'm putting it on silent. I'm just going to be silent for a minute. I don't want to answer the phone. And then so the friend got really worried. So then Camilla contacted the guy, S, and she's like, hi, are you at my door right now? And he said, yes. She's like, oh, sorry, I left. I couldn't wait for you to come because I contacted my mom and told my mom that, I was scared. And so I went to my mom's house for the night. He said, well, why is your car in the underground? And she said, oh, my mom picked me up. And he's like, oh, okay. And she's like, all right. And he's like, well, how did you know I was at your door? And she said, oh, my neighbor is across the way and you were knocking kind of hard. He said, oh, yeah, I was only knocking hard because I was worried about you. You didn't answer the first time or the second time. So I thought I'd knock hard because I thought maybe someone was in there with you, harming you. She said, no. I'm at my mom's. I'm good. I'll talk to you tomorrow. And he's like, oh, okay. And then she asked him, she's like, my neighbor wants to know why you have rope and in a plastic bag, right? And he just took off. And when he took off, he didn't answer her. She saw him run, and that was it. So about a week later, he contacted her, and she's like, oh, hi, but he contacted her through unknown number. And she was like, huh? And she was a little afraid to answer it, but, of course, curiosity killed the cat. So she answered it, and it's him. And he's like, hey, I'm sorry for calling you through unknown number. I thought you wouldn't answer my call because I haven't been in contact with you, but I was wondering if you want to meet up for a coffee. And she did not want to meet up for a coffee, clearly. But at the same time, she was thinking to herself, is she just being weird with this guy? But then no, she was also thinking to herself how he forced himself on her going to his place. And then she was also thinking to herself, the rope in the plastic bag. Like, that's kind of strange. And even though he was very dashing and handsome, she couldn't believe for the life of her that a handsome, dashing man would be so, out on the edge, mental edge, right? So she just was, second guessing herself a lot. But she still said no to him and didn't give in to his requests. So she also stayed away from that convenience store. But one day she was down in her garage and she's getting into her car. Lo and behold, he's right there. Right there. She was on her way out. Now, she was on her way out to her friend's house, the same friend that she was messaging. They worked together and they had a project that they were working on together. So her friend was waiting for her. When she got to the car, and he was there by her car. He told her, just get in the car and shut up. And she refused. She refused to get into the car. And he said to her, if you don't get into that car, you're going to get into my car. And she was like, no, 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 no. He took her and put her in the trunk of his car. And that was it, right in the underground parking. Just like that. She's a tiny girl and he was a big man. And he just went, boom, opened up his trunk with his automatic key opener thing and just threw her right in the trunk and slammed it down just like that. Now, he could not get out of the garage unless he used her key to get out. To get in and out of the garage, you needed a card. Now, this is where it becomes sketchy, because how did he get in the building the first time when he was knocking on her door? He probably waited for someone to open it up and he went in. How did he get out? So he goes and he yells through the trunk and he says, give me the card to get out of the garage. And she says, no. Now she has her cell phone on her as well, and she's already on the cell. And she called, of course, 911. And 911, they're talking to her, and she tells them that she is in her garage of her building and she is in the trunk of a car. And the operator says to her, what's your building? She says exactly where she's at and everything like that. And he is yelling outside of the trunk, saying to her, come on, don't kick, okay? Just, we can talk about this. Come on. And he's afraid that she's going to kick him if she opens up the trunk. Now, she's a small young girl, so she must have been feisty and very, strong and everything at that moment. And so 911, the 911 operator could actually hear him through the trunk saying, oh no, we can talk about this. And so they asked, do you know what his name is? And so she didn't really know his full name. And so the operator stayed on the phone with her until the police showed up. Well, the police did show up, and he looked at them like silent, and then he started to run. He didn't run towards them. He ran away from them, so they didn't shoot him. And he didn't have any type of weapon. So they told him, of course, freeze, and then they started to chase him. Now, before they can even get to him, he started to slow down, and then he dropped, and he died about a month later in the hospital. The police found a notepad in the guy's car, and it was an entire plan from the beginning to the end. And that's how they found out that he stalked her from when she checked in from the Facebook app. Then, shortly after that, after he died, she was on Facebook, Camilla, and she was just kind of, looking through the posts, and she didn't really say anything to anyone about it except her one friend there. And she noticed on the Facebook post that on Michael's Facebook post, it said, hey, buddy, sorry, rest in peace. And then he had also tagged his buddy's Facebook account. So she looked at the photo, and lo and behold, it was her stalker. Then she went on to her stalker's Facebook account and saw that it was the guy that she had that argument with. And she was like, wow, this guy poisoned himself. That's what happened. He had a needle. They found the needle in his hand. And obviously that needle was meant for her. So imagine if she did open the trunk when he requested. He most likely would have poked her with that, and, the rest is unpredictable. So, yes, he took his own life, and they found out afterwards that he has done this before. And so, she still is in the process of wanting to contact Michael to tell Michael that the situation actually happened with her, and it was due to that argument. But she doesn't know how to say it, and she doesn't know how to quite explain it. So she's going to take her time on that. She's still doing some counseling, and she just wants to say to everyone, be careful with your interactions. And if it's not so important, don't make it important. Just keep going with the flow of life and focus on your own path. Guys, thank you so much for joining me. This is Storytime. I'm Cerise. Don't forget to subscribe. Take care. Huge hugs, loads of love, and big blesses.